Grand Portage Resources' Herbert Gold Project in southeast Alaska highlights increased gold resource, indicated and inferred, of 860,000 ounces, in excess of 10 grams per ton gold. Expansion drilling is planned on the Herbert Gold property for the summer of 2019. Grand Portage Resources trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is investigative reporter Spencer Fernando. You can find his articles at SpencerFernando.com. Welcome back to the show, Spencer.
Good to be here.
Spencer, Capital One, hugest, biggest, giantest, I don't know if that's even a word, security breach in North American history. 100 million American credit card accounts hacked, 6 million Canadians at risk. What can the government do to stop something like this, or is this just a private security matter?
Well, it seems mostly like it's failing, obviously, by the company. One thing I talk about on Twitter is how this is a problem with centralization. You see it in governments, you see it in companies all over the world, is that you can save a lot of money by centralizing everything, whether it's one big database or, government being controlled in one area, putting all government institutions in one city. The problem is if something goes wrong, then the whole system can fail, so there's just one point of failure. So I think if you had a situation where it would certainly cost more money at the beginning, but a company like Capital One separated their database into different sections, put it in different parts of the country, had computers that weren't connected to each other, it would be so much slower and it would cost more, but there would be far less of if you get hacked, then only part of it gets hacked, right? But I think the problem is that everyone wants to save some money. They want it to be as they say, as efficient as possible, but that leads to systems that are extremely vulnerable.
Should the government have stiffer legislation in place to force companies to take cybersecurity more seriously?
I think so. One way they could do it is they could provide a tax incentive for companies that decentralize certain things to prevent that from happening. That could defray some of the cost for them. But that doesn't seem too likely because governments they're making the same mistake too. They're centralizing everything. So, a good example is Ottawa or Washington D.C., for example, or any capital city. They put all of the big government institutions in one city. And that's where the lobbyists go, so the city gets corrupted by just the fact that there's so much influence in one place. So companies all send all the people to try to influence people. That's where all the political people go. And if you put it throughout the country, the government would be more connected to people across the country. Power wouldn't be as centralized, and there'd be less of an incentive to try to corrupt an entire place. But again, governments seem to like centralizing things, and centralization, it works good until it doesn't, and then when it doesn't work out well, then it's often a massive crisis. The banking system is a good example. A few banks having so much power, so much influence, one or two of them go down, starts to cascade, and the whole system can collapse. So, got to decentralize things.
Now, Equifax in the States has a massive class action lawsuit settlement for the people who were victims of their security breach, but nothing for Canadian customers. Should we have legislation that allows a court ruling in the U.S., for example, covering something like that to apply to Canadians so they don't have to go through the same expense and trouble and worrisome events to get recovery here?
Well, yeah, if it's a U.S.-based company, and then if Canadians were impacted by it, then if the U.S. court rules in favor of, the problem could be that Canadians probably can't join a class action lawsuit in the United States, so there may be a block on the U.S. end doing that. But yeah, certainly, so many of our regulations are already tied together with the states anyway. If there's something that impacts Canadians and Americans, and the Americans are getting a deal or getting a settlement, then the Canadians impacted by that should get it too.
We are countries, when it comes to civil cases, ruled by case law in Britain, Australia, New Zealand, the U.S., and Canada. Cases where, they're tried in English and the decisions are based on the old British common law system, which goes back hundreds of years. Shouldn't it apply here as well?
You'd think so. I mean, it's wouldn't be too tough of a stretch to make that happen. But I would think perhaps the block would just be on the U.S. end, that Canadians couldn't have joined a lawsuit that was filed in the United States. So, but I'm sure that's something they could work out in a trade deal.
Conservative leader Andrew Scheer said the Trudeau government should have done more to prevent this. Is there anything governments can do?
Well, it could have been tough if the majority of their customers are in the U.S. and it's a U.S.-based company. It would have been tough to see what a Canadian government could have done about that. In terms of companies in Canada, I think you can have tougher penalties, as I said, give incentives to decentralize, but not too much. I can't see what influence the Canadian government would have over a U.S.-based company of that size.
Well, the head of Facebook, Zuckerberg, refused to appear before a joint Canadian-UK panel investigating cybersecurity. Does it seem like Canada and other countries apart from the U.S. are at a loss to deal with this?
Well, yeah, in many ways we are, because Canada, for example, is just, our economy is smaller than the economy of California. We've got about the same population as California. The U.S.-based companies, Facebook knows that if the Canadian government brought in some regulation that stopped Canadians from using Facebook, then Canadians would be understandably pissed off and would probably boot that government from power. So Facebook is kind of calling the bluff, saying, yeah, Canada could be upset, the Canadian government could be upset, but what can they do about a gigantic company? With what is it now? It's like 1 or 2 billion people using it, headquartered in the States. There's really not much a Canadian government can do about that.
Yeah, I've heard if Facebook was a country, it would be the third largest on Earth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's massive. Even Twitter's a lot smaller, but Twitter's got still over 200 million people on it. So, yeah, there's not really too much a government of like Canada can really do about it.
We'll have more with Spencer Fernando right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Spencer Fernando. Spencer, Canada has given $250 million to the Chinese Infrastructure Bank. Should Canada be giving any money to China in any form?
No, not at all. We should be asking for that money back. It's unfortunate that Trudeau has not done that. That's something Scheer has called for the government to do, is to take back the $250 million that was given and to stop any further contributions. But again, what we're seeing right now is the Trudeau government the only people they can get tough on apparently are former Canadian diplomats to China. They can't actually get tough on China itself. So, at this point, they just keep showing weakness. They don't retaliate. They don't pull any contributions. They don't even speak with any toughness. They just keep asking for meetings and getting rebuffed. So from China's perspective, they're saying, well, they're using Canada to send a message to the Western world. We're the country that they can bully and intimidate and seemingly get away with it. And if the approach doesn't change, I don't see why China's behavior would change, because right now it's working out for them.
China is going to have a $6,000 suite at the BC Municipalities Union meeting. Should they be allowed to even have one?
No. We've got to send a message. You can't. When people just arbitrarily kidnap your citizens, you can't keep inviting them in and saying, oh, we'll be nice to you, here's a booth, we'll keep investing in you, we're not going to take our money away. But again, there seems to be a problem with kind of the whole Canadian ruling class, that they just don't know how to be tough. They don't understand I think the ruthless side of human nature they just don't understand. That just because you might want to be nice to a country doesn't mean that that country will be nice to you, and doesn't mean that other world leaders are not willing to use intimidation, murder, kidnapping, violence, threats, all those things to get what they want. And if we're not prepared to at least do some of those same things in retaliation, then the whole world is going to see that we can be taken advantage of, and we just look like a kind of naive and weak country, and that's just going to invite even more mistreatment.
Is Canada still giving away millions in foreign aid to India?
I think India does get some money. It's not as much as in past years, just because India is getting richer over time. But, I mean, up until a few years ago, even China was getting foreign aid money. So, yeah, there's definitely a problem. And personally, I'm against the whole foreign aid system. I think disaster aid, when, say, there's a tsunami or there's a disease outbreak, I would support that for emergencies. But the idea of just giving $5 billion a year away, or 5 or 6, some of you even said it's closer to 10 when you add it all up. Some of the things that are not considered foreign aid, but really are, that money should be kept within Canada. I mean, you've got all the boil water advisories, you've got the water crisis at Attawapiskat, you've got veterans who are homeless, seniors living in poverty. $5 billion a year could sure do a lot to help those problems, and that's where our tax money should be spent.
Well, yes, it's true. China and India getting foreign aid, both atomic powers. Should any country that can afford to make nuclear weapons be given any kind of aid?
No, I mean, that's a great point. You look at Pakistan, for example. Pakistan's very poor. They get tons of foreign aid from Canada, but they have a nuclear program, and they have a pretty large military. And so the problem when you give foreign aid to countries like that is they will just say, okay, so you give Pakistan $500 million. Well, they'll just cut their healthcare budget by $500 million and up their military budget by $500 million, and then send some of that foreign aid to their healthcare budget. So in a lot of cases, we're actually subsidizing the militaries of other countries when you look at how they actually spend the money. In some cases, we're actually directly subsidizing it. The Trudeau government agreed to build a road for the Jordanian military to help fund the road for them. So, yeah, it just seems crazy. And Jordan's a pretty rich country. Their king sure lives pretty well, so not sure why we're spending money in those places.
Sure, why should he be getting gold-plated limos when people need a handout?
Yeah, I mean, he's going around hanging out with Will Smith, brought Will Smith to the country, apparently picked him up at the airport in his own car. I mean, the King of Jordan in some ways is a good influence, certainly if you look at the Middle East compared to a lot of the other countries. But still, I mean, if he can afford to be hanging out with celebrities, then Canadian taxpayers probably shouldn't be building stuff for his military.
We'll have more with Spencer Fernando right after this.
Cypress Development Corp is developing a world-class lithium resource in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. The size of the resource makes the Clayton Valley project a premier asset with the potential to impact the future of lithium supply. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the OTCQB, symbol CYDVF, and on Frankfurt, symbol C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Spencer Fernando. Spencer, is the Trudeau government trying to put gag orders on former government employees when it comes to commenting on foreign policy?
Yeah, David Mulroney and Ike St. Jacques, both two former ambassadors to China, said that they were contacted by a government official who told them that on behalf of the PMO, he was warning them to stop talking about China, stop criticizing government China policy, because it wasn't helpful with an election, in the election environment, and that they should be clearing their public statements with the government first. So keep in mind, these are not even current government officials. They're private citizens now. And you have the government telling them to basically shut up and stop criticizing our policy on China, which isn't how you're supposed to be doing things in a free country. And again, it's interesting. I mean, instead of improving their China policy and actually showing some toughness, they're just trying to attack anyone who criticizes them. So, it's kind of an authoritarian move, and it really gives the sense that the government really has no idea what they're doing, and all they can do is try to, silence anyone who thinks the China policy isn't going well, which would really mean silencing everybody in the country.
does this seem like the cover-up scheme when the SNC Lavalin scandal broke with Jody Wilson-Raybold?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, Trudeau's even using the exact same messaging. He said, the PMO did not direct anyone. So, and he keeps saying direct, just like he did in SNC Lavalin. We didn't direct any decisions he made. So you can have someone, you just imagine if someone calls up the government official and says, hey, the PM's really unhappy with some of these diplomats criticizing China policy. You should have a chat with them and let them know to clear their statements first. And so then the PMO says, oh, we never said direct. We didn't direct the guy. We didn't say direct. We just mentioned the PM was unhappy and wanted to discuss. So it's really a legalistic way to try to avoid admitting that there was, orders or that they were told to get the guy to silence diplomats. So, I mean, they're playing a game. I don't think many people are gonna fall for it, but, it's the same exact SNC Lavalin playbook.
What do you think is behind Jody Wilson-Raybold's decision to launch a book just before the election? I
don't know. I mean, for one, if she's going to make some money off it, can't fault someone for trying to make money with a book. In her case, after all she's been through, maybe I guess it depends what the context is, right? If there's a lot of negative information, getting to what really happened in the scandal, then it could influence the election. She just wants to get her story out. It's a smart move because it'll get far more attention before an election than it would afterwards. And some business decisions. It also help her in the election. I mean, she's going to be on the ballot, so if there's a bunch of news stories about her, it helps her as well. So I think it's a pretty smart move. We'll see. It really depends what's in it. It could be damaging to the Trudeau Liberals, and rightfully so. They treated her pretty terribly, so I can't imagine she'd be too happy with that.
What are the latest poll numbers you've seen?
It's getting pretty even. If you look at the poll aggregators, it's getting narrower, the lead for the Conservatives. Some have shown the Conservative lead evaporating. Really, it looks like BC is pretty close. Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, pretty strong for the Conservatives. Ontario, pretty close. Quebec, decent Liberal lead. Atlantic Canada's kind of been the most inconsistent. Some showing the Liberals ahead, some showing the Conservatives ahead or tied. But it looks like, just like normal, it's probably going to come down to suburban Ontario.
So far, the Trudeau government has handed out a couple of billion in goodies in different electoral sectors, but where has most of that money gone and where hasn't it gone?
Most of it's gone to Quebec. Not a huge surprise, considering the Liberals they expect to lose lots of seats in Western Canada, so they're going to try to make those seats up in Quebec, and then Ontario hold on to what they have. But, most of the money's gone to Quebec. Almost none of it's gone to Alberta. Not a big surprise there. And they also spent about $17 million, I think, in government advertising and promotions just before the official, as the election gets closer. There's an official cutoff for government ads. They rushed a bunch of money out the door there, too. So, yeah, they're using their advantage. And they also passed legislation making it tougher for the other parties to fundraise or to advertise on social media. So, definitely kind of rigging the game in their favor.
Is it true the Green Party is passing the NDP in the polls?
Yeah, the most recent poll I saw had the Greens at 12% and the NDP at 11%. Now, some other polls have shown them a little closer. Some have shown the NDP ahead, but the trend, it's really what you look for in polls is the overall trend, and definitely under Jagmeet Singh, the trend is pretty terrible for the NDP, and getting a little better for the Greens. So we'll see if there's some sort of tipping point. If enough people realize the Greens are catching up, you could see the NDP support really tank, to 7, 6, somewhere around there. Now Greens get up to 15%, so we'll see what happens.
Do you think the Greens, even though they might be gaining support, will get any more seats than they have now?
They'll probably, I think they could pick up a few more in BC. They do have a problem, though, is that if their support is relatively even throughout the country, they might come in third place in tons of ridings, but not win too many. I think some of the later projections have them around 4 or 5 seats. But again, if there's a tipping point where the NDP fully collapses and the Greens pick up most of that support, then, 10, 20, 30 seats for the Greens, definitely on the high end, but not impossible.
Was it a mistake to have the federal election on the same day as a major Jewish holiday?
Yeah, I mean, the government says, or the Elections Canada says they're not going to change that. We'll see if that affects turnout. I'm not sure if that was deliberate on the part of Elections Canada. Who knows? I mean, I'm generally not a big fan of them, but I'm not sure if that was a deliberate move. But, yeah, at this point, they probably feel it's too late to change it. And I guess we're just going to have to go with the election date as it is.
But there are advance polls, so if you can't make it out election day, you can vote beforehand, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they've kept expanding the amount of advance poll times there are. So there's generally, if you want to vote, there's no real reason not to be able to get out and do that.
Is the new NAFTA any better than the old NAFTA agreement?
No, it showed it would cost Canada about a study, I think the C.D. Howe Institute, it would cost Canada about 0.4% of GDP. Mexico, I think 0.6, in the U.S. 0.1. So on balance, it looks like worse for everybody, but worse for Canada than the U.S. But again, those predictions are, and that's just hypothetical. We haven't even seen it implemented yet, so tough to know. But I think it's fair to say Canada didn't get any concessions out of anybody, and really made a fair amount of concessions to the states, including intellectual property. Didn't get the steel and aluminum tariffs lifted. Didn't get any exemption from Buy America, and the Buy America program is now expanded. So yeah, not really the best negotiation on Canada's part.
Is Bombardier still getting bailout money from the federal government?
Yeah, they keep getting money from all over the place. They seem to have kind of written in their business model almost that whenever they get in trouble, they'll get bailed out. So the last bailout, I think, was about $250 million, somewhere around there, by the federal government, and then they paid their executives a bunch of bonuses, fired some Canadian workers, and then sold off some of their Canadian assets. So again, this is just talked about bad negotiation. This is bad negotiation as well. I mean, if someone comes to you desperate for money, then you have some leverage over them when you're talking about the federal government and a big company. So why didn't the government guarantee Canadian jobs, or tell executives they couldn't pay themselves bonuses, or guarantee Canadian production? They just give them the money and then let them go act like a regular private sector company. But if you're a private sector company coming to the government for money, taxpayers for money, then you're not really operating as a private company, and I think you have to accept some restrictions over what you can do.
Is the Quebec government prepared to bail out SNC-Lavalin, which has also been bleeding red ink?
Yeah, they said they came out and gave a statement that said they weren't going to bail them out, but also left the door open, saying if there's a potential takeover by another company, then they would be prepared to intervene to keep the company in Quebec. So, yeah, I mean, that's leaving the door open to a bailout. And considering how much money Quebec spent on Bombardier, it wouldn't be surprising to see SNC-Lavalin get bailed out as well.
Do you think it's time for governments to stop bailing these companies out? Because it seems as long as they know there's going to be a bailout, they do nothing but get themselves into financial hot water again.
Yeah, I think so. I think either you stop bailing them out or you put conditions on them. So talking about Bombardier, I've said, well, Bombardier should maybe be forced to start making, Canada needs to build up our defense industry. So maybe they should be forced to start making military aircraft, start at no cost to Canada, start investing in military production, advanced aircraft technology for the military. At least if you're going to give them some money, get something out of it that benefits taxpayers and Canadians. But so far, that hasn't been the approach. So either don't bail them out, let them, fight it out in the free market, and if necessary, they don't win that fight, or you give them some money, but you set very strict conditions that protects taxpayers, protects Canadian jobs, and get some actual benefit for the country.
Spencer, anything else that we should be looking at right now?
No, that should be good.
Thanks a lot for being on the show.
You're welcome.
My guest has been investigative reporter Spencer Fernando. You can find his articles at SpencerFernando.com. If you have any questions for Spencer or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com, our YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.